The Carpi or Carpiani were an ancient people that resided in the eastern parts of modern Romania in the historical region of Moldavia from no later than c.AD 140 and until at least AD 318. The ethnic affiliation of the Carpi remains disputed, as there is no direct evidence in the surviving ancient literary sources. A strong body of modern scholarly opinion considers that the Carpi were a tribe of the Dacian nation. Other scholars have linked the Carpi to a variety of ethnic groups, including Sarmatians, Thracians, Slavs, Germans, and Celts, about a century after their earliest mention by Ptolemy, during which time the relations with Rome appear to have been peaceful. The Carpi emerged in c. 238 as among Rome's most persistent enemies. In the period AD 250 to 270, the Carpi were an important component of a loose coalition of trans-Danubian barbarian tribes that also included Germanic and Sarmatian elements. These were responsible for a series of large and devastating invasions of the Balkan regions of the empire, which nearly caused its disintegration in the crisis of the 3rd century. In the period 270 to 318, the Roman military emperors acted to remove the Carpi threat to the empire's borders. Multiple crushing defeats were inflicted on the Carpi in 273, 297, 298 to 308 and in 317. After each, massive numbers of Carpi were forcibly transferred by the Roman military to the Roman province of Pannonia as part of the emperor's policy of repopulating the devastated Danubian provinces with surrendered barbarian tribes. Since the Carpi are no longer mentioned in documents after 318, it is possible that the Carpi were largely removed from the Carpathian region by c. 318, or, if any remained, it is possible that they mingled with other peoples resident or immigrating into Moldavia, such as the Sarmatians or Goths. Name etymology. The Greco-Romans called this people the Carpi or Carpiani. Probably the earliest mention of them, under the name Kappa Alpha Rho Pi Iota Alpha Nu Omicron Iota, is in the Geographia of the 2nd century Greek geographer Ptolemy, composed c.AD 140. The name Carpi or Carpiani may derive from the same root as the name of the Carpathian mountain range that they occupied. Also first mentioned by Ptolemy under the name Kappa Alpha Rho Pi Alpha Tau Eta Sigma Carpates. The root may be the putative Proto-Indo-European word **ker, scare, meaning peak or cliff, carpa, precipice, and Latin scarpa. Scholars who support this derivation are divided between those who believe the Carpi gave the name to the mountain range and those who claim the reverse. In the latter case, Carpiani could mean simply people of the Carpathians, but the similarity between the two names may be coincidence, and they may derive from different roots. For example, it has been suggested that the name may derive from the Slavic root word krapu, meaning strong or brave. Also, it had been suggested that Carpathian mountains may derive from the Sanskrit root karkat that would give the meaning of rugged mountains. Some scholars consider that the following peoples recorded in ancient sources correspond to Ptolemy's Carpiani. The Carlipidi mentioned in the histories of Herodotus as residing in the region of the river Borysthenes. The Carpidi around the mouth of the river Tyras recorded in a fragment of Pseudo-Simnus. The Harpi, located near the Danube Delta, mentioned by Ptolemy himself. If so, the locations could imply that the Carpi had very gradually migrated westwards in the period 400 BC AD 140, a view championed by Carshit. These names' common element Carp appears frequently in Dacian and Thracian place names and personal names, but there is no consensus that these groups are in fact Carpi. Baikir suggests that they were Thraco-Dacian tribes distantly related to the Carpi territory. According to Ptolemy's Geographia, the Carpi occupied a region between the river Hierosis and the river Porata. This was outside Dacia proper, as defined by Ptolemy, whose eastern border was the Hierosis. East of this river lay what Ptolemy termed Sarmatia Europarea, a vast region stretching as far as the Crimea, predominantly, but by no means exclusively, populated by Sarmatian tribes. According to Ptolemy, the Carpi's neighbors were, to the north, the Kostobokai, to the south, in the Wallachian plain, the Roxolani Sarmatians, to the east of the Prut, the Bastinare, which had migrated into the region between the rivers Prut and Dniester around 200 BC, to the west, the eastern Carpathian mountains between the Siret and the border of the Roman province were probably populated by the free Dacians, i.e. ethnic Dacians residing outside Roman Dacia. However, it is not possible to reliably define the territories of these groups due to the imprecision of the ancient geographical sources. Also, it is likely that in many areas, ethnic groups overlapped and the ethnic map was a patchwork of dispersed subgroups. The Sarmatians and Bastinare are attested, in both literature and archaeology, all over Wallachia, Moldavia and Bessarabia. It is likely that, when Greco-Roman sources refer to conflicts with the Kostobokai Carpi or Goths, they are referring to coalitions of different groups under the currently hegemonic tribe. Given the Carpi's repeated raids south of the Danube and clashes with the Romans during the 3rd century, it is likely by California 230, the Carpi had extended the hegemony over eastern Wallachia, previously dominated by the Roxolani. Material culture. There is no dispute among scholars that some Spalach-era Dacian settlements in Moldavia were abandoned by 106, most likely, according to Baikir, as a result of the Roman conquest of Dacia. For this time, Baikir identifies two distinct cultures in Moldavia existing side by side. 1. A sedentary culture, labeled Daco-Carpic by Baikir, started around 106 and disappeared around 318. A smaller culture displayed characteristics usually associated with nomadic peoples from the Eurasian steppes, labeled Sarmatian by Baikir. By 1976, 117 sedentary settlements had been identified, the great majority located west of the Siret. The inhabitants lived in both surface dwellings and sunken floor huts. The single-roomed surface dwellings were made of wattle and beaten earth, usually of rectangular or square form, varying from 9 square m to 30 square m in size. Each contained a clay hearth placed at the center of the dwelling. The more numerous sunken earth huts are usually of oval or round shape. The sedentary people generally cremated their dead, both adults and children, according to Baikir. All the 43 purely Daco-Carpic cemeteries used only cremation. The ashes from the cremation were, in the great majority of cases, buried inside urns. Some graves contained grave goods, but no weapons other than a single dagger. Mundane goods include knives, keys, and belt buckles. Valuable goods include Sarmatian-style mirrors, silver earrings, gold pendants and beads. Pottery found in sedentary sites includes the handmade, porous type, grey wheel-made ware, red-fired pottery and imported Roman ware. Baikir describes the first two as continuing Dacian Latin pottery, and points to the presence of the so-called Dacian cup, a cup of distinctive design, as evidence of a Dacian base to this culture. However, he admits that the pottery also shows Roman and Sarmatian influence. The sedentary folk appear to have been generally illiterate. No Daco-Carpic inscription was ever found during the very intensive excavations carried out in the region. The sedentary culture did not issue its own coinage. However, Roman coinage circulated intensely in the Carpi's territory, according to Baikir. This is based on the large number of coin hoards found in Moldavia and about 100 isolated coins. However, the circulation of Roman coins seems to have virtually ceased after 218, as no coin hoards and only 7 isolated coins have been found from after Caracalla, who ruled a.d. 211 to 218. Nomadic cultural graves are predominantly of the inhumation type, found by 1976 in 38 places in Moldavia. These are predominantly found on the plains, rarely on the Carpathian foothills, either singly or in small groups of 2 to 13 graves, including men, women and children. The great majority of nomadic cultural graves are flat, in contrast to nomadic barrow graves found from the Dniester region eastwards. However, some secondary barrow burials have been found, mostly dating from 200 onwards. The nomadic graves always contain grave goods, often including weapons, and mirrors engraved with tangas. 6 cemeteries in Baikir's list contain both cremation and inhumation graves. At the Poienesti site, 6 adults and 17 children were buried. Of these, 2 adults and 7 children were found to have artificially elongated crania. This custom, achieved by tightly binding an infant's skull during its early growth phase, is associated with steppe nomads. Baikir identifies the adults as nomads and the children as the progeny of mixed nomad sedentary marriages. For the ratio of sedentary to nomadic graves, Baikir concludes that the sedentary folk constituted the majority of the population of Moldavia. In the mixed cemeteries documented by Baikir, nomadic graves constitute about 28% of the total. However, in Moldavia as a whole, nomadic graves represent no more than 1% of all graves. After 318, according to Baikir, the Daco-Carpic culture was in Moldavia replaced by the Santana de Mureș variant of the Cherniakov culture common to much of the North Pontic region of southeastern Europe in the period 200 to 400. Ethno-linguistic affiliation. There is no direct evidence in surviving Roman imperial-era sources, literary or epigraphic, regarding the language of the Carpi. In the near-total absence of inscriptions in the Barbaricum, the only valid indicator of the linguistic affiliation of barbarian peoples are personal names, which can sometimes be ascribed to a linguistic group. However, not a single Carpi personal name is preserved in the surviving ancient sources other than the name Carpi itself, which cannot be ascribed with confidence to any linguistic group. According to traditional Romanian historiography, as well as to several non-Romanian scholars, the Carpi were a people of the Dacian tongue and culture. Or Heather, who supports this view, suggests that the Carpi name was adopted as the collective name of the free Dacian tribes when they achieved a degree of political unification in the early 3rd century. However, a significant number of scholars dispute that the Carpi were ethnic Dacians, and have identified them variously as Sarmatians, Daco-Thracians, Celts, or even Proto-Slavicists. This is because the region between the rivers Siret and Dniester was of great ethnic diversity during the Roman imperial era. In addition to Scytho-Sarmatian tribes, the ancient sources attest Celts, Thracians, and Dacians. Also, some modern authors surmise the existence of ethnic groups formed in loco from mixed origins. The evidence to support a Dacian identity, archaeology, pottery and other artifacts identified as Dacian style by archaeologists such as Baikir, were discovered at sites in the region of Moldavia presumed inhabited by the Carpi in the period AD 100 to 300, as well as in burial sites. In particular, Baikir points to a cup of unusual design and to the corded decoration of pots as characteristic linguistically Dacian. However, determination of the Carpi's ethno-linguistic affiliation using the typology, or by the relative quantity, of finds has been questioned by Niculescu, but he concurs that the presence of Dacian-style artifacts attests to the material level of the indigenes, but does not prove their ethnicity. These objections reflect modern archaeological theory, which considers that material cultures are not a reliable guide to the ethnic identity, and even less to the language, of the people in question. Zosimus, a Byzantine chronicler writing around AD 500, records an invasion of Rome's Danubian provinces in 381 by a barbarian coalition of Huns, Syri and Carpidici. The latter term has been taken by some scholars as proof of the Carpi's Dacian ethnicity, but this is the only literary evidence linking the Carpi name to that of the Dacians, and Zosimus is regarded by numerous modern scholars as an unreliable chronicler. One historian accords Zosimus an unsurpassable claim to be regarded as the worst of all the extant Greek historians of the Roman Empire. It would be tedious to catalogue all the instances where this historian has falsely transcribed names, not to mention his confusion of events. In any case, the term is ambiguous. It has also been interpreted as the Carpi and the Dacians, or the Carpi mixed with the Dacians. According to the eminent classical scholar Karstedt, the term does not refer to the Carpi at all but to free Dacians, who occupied the territory of the Carpi after the latter were deported by the Romans. He argues that, in ancient Greek, the first part of the term could only have a geographical meaning, i.e. Carpidici means the Dacians from the land of the Carpi. In the same vein, it has also been interpreted as the Dacians of the Carpathians. It is possible that the entire Carpi people were transferred to the Roman Empire by 318, which is supported by literary and archaeological evidence. Bakier notes that the culture which he calls Daco-Carpic ended in about 318. If so, then Zosimus's Carpidici could not be referring to the Carpi. Inscription A223 is engraved on the tombstone of Publius Aelius Proculianus, a centurion of the cohors 7 Praetoria, missed in the Dacian war at Castellum Carporum. According to Bakier and others, this refers to the war against the Carpi conducted by Emperor Philip the Arab in 246 sevenths, and the Castellum Carporum is the stronghold of the Carpi mentioned by Zosimus, where the final battle of the campaign took place. By implication, he argues, this supports the view that the Carpi were Dacians, but other scholars identify the Castellum Carporum as a Roman auxiliary fort on the lower Danube, evidenced by the Vicus Carporum, a fort satellite village opposite Carsium, mentioned by Ammianus Marcellinus. Cuff argues that Proculina was actually in command of this fort when he was killed. A possible argument against Dacian ethnicity is that Roman emperors did not use the long-established imperial victory title Dacicus Maximus for victories over the Carpi, but instead adopted the separate title Carpicus Maximus. This was introduced by Philip the Arab in 247, the first Roman emperor to defeat the Carpi in person. Such titles were usually ethnographic, not geographical. The emperors Aurelian and Constantine I claimed both the Dacicus and Carpicus titles. The existence of a separate victory title for the Carpi may imply that the Romans did not consider the Carpi to be ethnic Dacians. The same argument may also apply against a Sarmatian, a Germanic identity for the Carpi, as Sarmaticus and Germanicus were also established titles in Philip's time. However, the the victory title argument is not conclusive, as 3rd-century emperors used 3 titles simultaneously to indicate victories against the same ethnic group: the Iranians, Parthicus, Malicus and Persicus. Note: some of the titles above are attested to in multiple inscriptions.